website Ballotpedia has listed Minnesota as one of the top battleground states to watch, and House Republicans are campaigning to retain their majority in the upcoming election. Joining me in the studio is Speaker of the House, Kurt Daudt, to talk about his party's efforts to keep control. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
In 2014, your caucus successfully appealed to rural and suburban voters. Are you focusing your efforts towards them again this season?
Well, we said at the time that we really wanted to represent all Minnesotans, and we had felt the previous 2 years that's where Democrats had let Minnesotans down. We really feel like they had been kind of a Minneapolis-St. Paul-centric caucus and really represented issues that really only those two areas cared about and left the rest of Minnesota behind. So we have really tried to be a caucus that and lead with a sense that we want to represent all Minnesotans. And we feel like we've done that.
How does the failure to reach bonding, transportation, and tax agreements in the last session help or hinder your efforts with voters?
Well, I think you probably would assume it might hurt us, but ultimately, I think when folks look back at what happened, we passed a tax bill that was the most broadly supported tax bill in history, I think, or at least in modern history. 89% of the legislature voted for that tax bill. We put it on the governor's desk. It passed the House, it passed the Senate. We put it on the governor's desk. The governor said he wasn't going to veto it, to hold it up as in negotiations for the bonding bill. He did exactly that. So I do feel that the governor broke his word and has not been honest about that since. I think that's a problem. But I think Minnesotans ultimately want that bill passed, and they appreciate the effort that went into it. On the bonding bill, we passed the bonding bill out of the House. We had agreement on a bonding bill that I think would have been the largest bonding bill in state history, which is not a small task. Normally our caucus doesn't support that large of a bonding bill, but in this instance we do it because it was the right kind of bonding bill that invested in the right kind of infrastructure. A good example of that, a normal bonding bill would have maybe about 10% road and bridge money, and this bonding bill was about 50% road and bridge money. So it was the kinds of investment that I think are very broadly supported, and it had broad bipartisan support. More than half of the minority caucus, the Democrats in the House, voted for that bill. So we do feel like we did a good job of putting a bill together. The fact that they didn't happen, really, I think people can see now the fault doesn't lie with us. We've done everything we could to get them to pass. I think folks knew that it was Southwest Light Rail that was holding up the bonding bill, not only on the very last night of session, but also throughout the negotiations. Well, Democrats and the governor have found a way to do Southwest Light Rail without the legislature. We don't agree with that, and it's not about whether the project is good or bad, it's about the process. There have been no public hearings, there's been no, we didn't go through the right process to get there, and I think that was what was wrong with it. Well, now that that's happening, I think Minnesotans are starting to ask, why can't we have a special session to pass the bonding and the tax bills? And that's the question that we ask as well.
Well, speaking of transportation and road and bridge infrastructure, Governor Dayton sent a letter to lawmakers signed by commissioners and former commissioners of the Department of Transportation asking that you not earmark specific dollars to specific projects. Apparently, in the bonding bill that failed, some projects were put ahead of others, some that weren't shovel-ready.
Sure.
Should the legislature be deciding which projects get to go forward, or should it be up to MnDOT?
Well, there also was a legislative auditor's report that was very critical of the selection process that MnDOT goes through, and saying that it was arbitrary and not using the right criteria. So there are problems even with the way MnDOT selects projects. I'll say that the projects that we selected really are projects that people have talked about for, in some cases 40 years, as in Highway 14 in southern Minnesota. These are projects that people see that are regionally important, that really need an investment. If we put money into, for instance, corridors of commerce, which by the way is earmarking, that's the legislature earmarking project. So when the Democrats say we don't want you to earmark it, we want you to put it in corridors of commerce, that's also earmarking. So I think it's a convenient excuse on their part. But when you put money into corridors of commerce, the last project that was funded in corridors of commerce was Highway 94. The next project that will be funded in corridors of commerce is Highway 94. So, I think there's a sense in most of Minnesota that if you, and especially in greater Minnesota, and I believe that it's true, that if we just put money into the general transportation formula, that money gets eaten up by projects in the metro area, and that we don't take care of some of these regionally important corridors that have been overlooked for years and years. Projects like Highway 23 and between Wilmer and St. Cloud, Highway 14 in southern Minnesota. One of the projects that we earmarked or like we say prioritized is Highway 12 out of the West Metro. This is the most dangerous stretch of freeway in the state of Minnesota. So we think it's important. I think the statistics in a 9-month stretch of last year, 5 people lost their lives on that freeway. And now we're not funding that, frankly, because this bill didn't pass. So my hope is that no one else loses their life, and typically it happens in the winter time because you get icy roads and you've got almost a 2-lane freeway situation where it's not divided. So I mean, the projects were selected because they're important, and the fact that more than half of the legislature, far more than half of both the minority caucuses in the House and the Senate voted for these bills shows you that they are bills and projects that people see as important. So we stand by them. However, in a sense of compromise, we gave up our position on the earmarks, and we said we'll take the Senate's language, and the Senate Democrats had written some language that would still make these projects qualify, but not specifically earmark the money to those projects. So, but that wasn't good enough. So we're still not having a special session. And I think folks need to talk to the governor and to Representative Thiessen about that. I have been the one who has initiated all conversations on special session and trying to get these 2 bills passed in the last 3 months. I'm the only one that's initiating conversations. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I tried to get the governor and the other leaders to meet.
Do you think it's maybe getting too close to the election at this point?
I don't think it matters, and I don't think the election should play in, and that's what the governor is saying, but folks sent us here to do our job, and I think they expect us to use all the time that's available to do our job, and regardless of whether that comes right before the election or not, I think we have to ask ourselves, and this is the question I asked the governor, is it the right thing for Minnesota to pass these bills now, or would it be better if we wait until the next session? And the governor's answer very clearly, and he wrote this back in a letter to me. His answer to me very clearly was, yes, it's better to do it now. Well, then let's do it. When I contacted the governor the last time and said, hey, let's meet. Let's all sit down face to face because I think we're so close. I think we can get there. His response to me was, I can't meet with you unless Paul Thiessen is there because we need his votes for the bonding bill, so he needs to be there. And I said, well, his members already voted for this bonding bill. And I said, fine, that's great. Let's have everybody there. I contacted Paul Thiessen. He wouldn't even give me a time that he was available to meet. So the governor and Representative Thiessen are blocking a special session. I think they're doing it for political reasons. I've been very vocal about that. I think it's pretty obvious and people can see that. And to me, it's incredibly wrong. I think you have to ask yourself, when you're leading the state and running the state, the question that I asked the governor is the right one. Is it better for us to do this now, or is it better for the state if we wait? And the answer was very clearly from the governor and from me, let's do it now. But for some reason, they're not, and I think it's for political reasons.
Speaker Daudt, we have to stop there. We're out of time. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope you'll come back again.
Thank you.